Okay, I think I'd like to get going here. So, welcome everyone. Uh, Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a little time here with us and learn about our eXactpark solution and how we help our customers. Um, my name is Ryan Hickey. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer and one of the co-founders of 11X. If anyone wants to contact me, please feel free to reach out. There's my email address. Also, obviously, you have our contact information from the invite for this as well. Please feel free to reach out anytime. And I want to start off by just saying, it's kind of a special year for us, where we've turned 11. We're turning 11 this year. Whoops, sorry, trying to get my presentation on my left screen here. There you go. And we didn't celebrate too hard on our 10th year birthday because we kind of have a lot of fun with our name 11X, and it seemed very appropriate for us to celebrate on our 11th year. So if you're ever at a conference or anything this year, please stop by the booth. We'll have some special treats. We love customers as much as we can. And some ground rules for this particular webinar. Diana is on my team. She's our marketing person, and she's been a great help setting up the webinar. Thank you, Diana. And she will be assisting me if anything goes wrong or if there's anything that I need help with, including the Q&A at the end. So we are trying to maintain everyone's privacy. So we do, the attendees are anonymous. You can submit a question anonymously. The chat's disabled. Now, there are a few little quirks with Teams, like, for example, if you react to someone's question or comment, or you make a comment yourself, you're no longer anonymous, which may be fine. I mean, it's your choice, but I just want to make sure that's clear. And yeah, there's a Q&A tab at the top of your screen you may or may not be familiar with, and that's the area to submit the questions. We hope to get through this demo in the first 30 minutes and then move on to questions for the remaining 15 minutes. Oh, and just please feel free to start submitting questions whenever they may come up, and we'll just queue them up for the end. So why eXactpark? What are we trying to do here at 11X? It's really about helping you understand your parking assets. Where's the parking? What are the regulations on the parking? How is the parking being used? As well as providing drivers with some choice on where to park. So it's all about helping them find the right parking for them. If they have any special needs, they might need accessibility stall, or maybe they need EV charging, or whatever the case may be. We can help them find the right spot. As well as we're about helping our customers achieve positive outcomes, not just for their organization, but for the community at large. So what does that mean? A lot of the traffic on campus or in a city situation is caused by people just driving around looking for parking. I think everybody in the parking industry understands that quite well. So how do you help solve that problem so there's less traffic congestion, it's safer, reduced greenhouse gases? It's really about understanding your parking and then taking actions to help improve that parking. And we'll talk about some of that stuff in more detail throughout the presentation. So at the core of what we're providing is really very high quality data. So we achieve that by monitoring parking. We'll get into a little more detail in the next slide on how exactly we do that. But essentially, we provide real-time parking monitoring at the stall level in terms of the resolution. And that's very, very accurate, very reliable, secure, and completely private. We don't use cameras, so we don't invade any privacy. In fact, the sensor just detects whether a car there is not. There's no way to identify the vehicle, the person, or anything like that. We provide a complete end-to-end solution where we do everything from the installation, the network design, provide the software, but we also work very well with partners. We aggregate data from third parties, like payment transactions, for example. We also have an API which we use to integrate our occupancy data and the data we're collecting into other systems. And we help streamline operations in several different ways. One big one being enforcement, because especially if we have that payment data, we know the compliance in real time and also historically, um, sometimes down to the stall level if it's paid by stall. But if not, we still know at the zone level and can really help direct more effective enforcement. And then 11X, a little bit about our DNA. We really, really value our customer relationship. All of our customers are referenceable. Some of the things they say about us is your stuff just works. And, we haven't gotten around to testing this because we're too busy trying to fix other stuff that's not working. You're a tech company that seems to be able to have a solution that actually works. So this is something that we take a lot of pride in, and we work very, very hard with our customers. We consider them partners in each of the projects that we deploy with them to make sure it's a success. So I'll get in a little bit more detail on the how, and it's really about, if you look, hopefully you can see my cursor, but there's a car here with a sensor underneath. So that sensor can be either installed beneath the surface, which is a great deal of our deployments are above the snow belt in the US or Canada. And you can't have a surface mounted sensor in that situation because the snowplow blade will just take it right off the surface. So we do have a lot of these deployed. And as I mentioned, we do have a second type of installation method, which is we call surface mount, which can be affixed to the surface. The sensors inside are identical, and what they do is they detect the presence of a vehicle. They use two main types of sensor technologies. One is a radar, which detects the distance above the sensor, and the other one's a magnetometer, which detects whether if there's metal, basically a change in magnetic field. So as a car come or as a car left, that information's transferred over our wireless network named LoRaWAN, which is an open global standard. The sensors themselves are battery operated and they last 10 years, and we back that with a 10-year warranty. So they are going to transfer that occupancy information in real time through the wireless network to the 11X cloud. Once it gets stored there, we're able to present that to our dashboard or third-party dashboards, Power BI, or we have lots of partners like CurbIQ and Modi that can take the data from our APIs, as well as we can drive intelligent enforcement, and we can present that data on digital displays, which are dynamic and can be updated as the occupancy changes to help direct vehicles and drivers to available parking. So without further ado, I'd love to switch over to doing a bit of a live demo. So bear with me here. So here's a customer of ours in Kirkland, Washington. And let me just orientate us a little bit here. So if I zoom out, satellite view. This happens with Teams sometimes. It doesn't update as quickly. There we go. So where is Kirkland? So Kirkland is very close to Seattle. So there's this wonderful lake here, Lake Washington. I recently visited our customer there, and it really is a beautiful area. So they have a lot of people that come to their community, especially in the summer, spring, summer, fall, to kind of enjoy the lake front, and there's lots of restaurants and whatnot. So they have quite a acute seasonal parking pain, if you will. So they have enough parking for their residents, but of course they have lots of visitors, and this can cause congestion and a high demand for parking. So to orientate you a little bit about what you're seeing on the screen here. So this is all the parking overlaid on a Google map, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. On the right here, you can see kind of at a glance current status. So it's 42.7% occupied across the entire city right now. You can see the number of occupied and vacant. There's about 500 stalls here. And you can see this to unknown. So what does that mean? So we're very transparent in terms of the status of our sensors. And we do have a sensor go offline from time to time. And so this two unknown means we have two sensors offline. So in this case, there's been some road work. I can't remember exactly what was happening, but a couple of the sensors got dug up, and that's why it's showing an unknown state. In this deployment in particular, we've been there for almost 2 years, and we haven't had a sensor actually fail. It's been there have been some go offline, and that's been because of road work. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is there's some kind of stats. This is kind of some at-a-glance stats for the previous 24-hour period. So, well, really, yesterday from midnight to 11 p.m. is what these stats reflect. And here you have a graph that shows the occupancy, for example, as it changes over the course of the day. So 7 a.m. starts to get a bit busy by 8 a.m. and so on. It peaks around 52% around noon. Drops off a bit in the afternoon, comes up a bit in the evening, and then drops off again. Nothing that surprising there. And as you can see, the peak occupancy on average for this community is yesterday anyways, was only 52%. So just the surface level, you might think, oh, they don't really have a parking problem. But hold that thought, and we're going to drill in here to see if that's really true. Because, of course, we're all about trying to understand how your parking is being used. So a little bit more about the dashboard here. So you can see these Kirkland parking, and there's different street names and lot names here. So you can organize the parking spots however you like. We call these zones. Completely configurable. You can add a zone, remove zone. You can put different stalls in different zones. It's completely whatever makes sense to each of the customers. So this is the layout that makes sense for Kirkland. In addition, you can put a sensor on Lake Street, but you could also assign it to the ADA zones, and they've decided to do this, which I think is quite brilliant. Basically, all of their ADA stalls are now grouped into this zone. You can just click on that. It filters in, and you can see in real time what the status is of all your ADA stalls. So right now, they only have 6 occupied, 24%. You can hover over them. So this car's been there for 28 minutes, I mean. So you have a lot of information just at your fingertips here. You may have also noticed that this graph looks different. That's because before we were looking at a graph that was for the entire city, which looked like this. And when we zoom into just the ADA stalls, it has a different profile. In addition to being able to click on the different zones on the left here, you can also see that some of these zones are represented by P's on the map. You can hover over a P and you can quickly see, for Marsh parking lot, for example, there's only 2 occupied, and this one you have 36 vacant. Now in the summertime, that would look very different, although it is only, what time is it there? I guess it's 10 a.m. On the West Coast. So another way to kind of be able to go around, you can also click in. So I clicked on the Lake Street P. You can see Lake Street highlighted here, as well as now I have a per stall view of Lake Street. And again, the analytics updated on the right here. So you can also click on any of these streets. So if I go over to Main Street, so Main Street right now is 67% occupied. Again, you can just go around and say, okay, yeah, 44 minutes. You can kind of get a feel for how long people have parked there. And maybe you want to, look a little deeper into the occupancy here. So, this peaked at 85% yesterday around noon. But maybe you might be more interested in, okay, well, that's just one day. So what does this look like over a longer period of time? And we're able to slice and dice the data however we like here. So let's just go and look at what happened in January. So if I select January, I refresh. This is now updated. So the occupancy is an average of all the days between the 1st of January to the end of January. You can see here what the profile looks like. So it's getting a little bit more of a picture. We can see its occupancy is quite high. Peaks, 92%, 93.5%. I mean, basically people feel that there's no parking available once you get above 85%. So certainly they do have a parking problem on this street. You can always export data. So you can export your parking data in CSV, but we also have this cool feature, which is an occupancy heat map. So it's the same settings that I had set up there in the dashboard. I can take a look at, see what that looks like. And yeah, the red, so here's the legend down here. Anything that's red means it's above 80%. Orange is this range and yellow is this range. So you can see visually with this heat map that they have a huge parking problem in this one street. Really, really bad. Now, that might be obvious to them because they might know that, because if you drove around pretty much any time during the core of the day, you're going to see that there's almost no parking available. I'm sure they get complaints as well from businesses and visitors and whatnot. So this one, probably pretty obvious there's a parking problem there. But what may not be so obvious is, say, a different street. Like, let's take a look at Lake Street. So Lake Street right now is 50% occupied. If you look at over this, month of January, it really just peaks at 80%. So this is clearly not as an acute parking problem as, say, the other street, Main Street. But maybe they're getting lots of complaints. So they must be wondering, okay, why is everyone complaining? Because if I look here, I may not see that. So let's just take a look at the peak occupancy heat map for this one and see what might be happening there. So, this is for each of the days in January, kind of what the occupancy looks like over different hours of the day. And we can see here, actually, there's quite a few days where it's above 80%. You can see with the red here. And, that might be not necessarily that obvious to a parking manager or operator, because it could be, someone complained that there was almost no parking. I called in at 11 or 12, and you walk out at 3 in the afternoon, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like only half full. Why are people complaining about parking? It's because the nature of parking is very much related to the peak. It's during the peaks that are the biggest pain, and especially for communities like this where you might have those peaks that happen at lunchtime and peaks happen at like in the dinner time. Those peaks only get worse when the tourists are around, because they want to go to the restaurants and the shops and stuff. So very quickly and easily you can kind of figure out what's happening with your parking. And we have other statistics and stuff that you can look at really quickly, like dwell time, for example. So this is 2-hour free parking. So you might be like, oh, it's, we get all those peaks, we get all that, high occupancy. It's probably because people are overstaying. But you can see here that the average session times are only like not that bad. So and of course you can drill down and look into that deeper, but sending enforcement officers out to try to give more time regulation tickets is probably not going to solve this problem. So what is going to solve the problem? And there are definitely lots of options, like Footbase. Maybe they introduce paid parking during certain times of day or certain streets to try to get people to park on some of the adjacent streets that aren't as busy. For example, is basically you can set up alerts. So I kind of went through how it can help you understand your parking, but how can you help kind of drive outcomes? So one of the things you can do is you can add alerts. So in this case, you could add an alert for each of the stalls or within a zone, wherever you like, for cars that have overstayed. So any car that's stayed over 2 hours, for example, you can get an alert, SMS, text message, or you can just use it for if the occupancy in this particular zone goes above a certain level. There's a bunch of settings for the alerts. And then I guess the only thing I haven't really talked much about is the reports. So you are able to select different types of reports, payment compliances. I'll talk about that in a second, but 12 times turnover, occupancy, for whatever zone you want, date range, and you can name that report, and then you can schedule it to send it, say, once a week or whatever you want. So really useful to get these reports in your inbox, so you don't necessarily even have to come onto the dashboard. Another thing I want to show is I talked a little bit about payment compliance. So we don't do payment compliance with the city of Kirkland, but we do with other customers. In this case, we're looking at a parking lot, and we are ingesting the payment transaction data. And of course, we know what we call true occupancy. We know the occupancy of each of the stalls, not caring whether they paid or not paid. And you can see here that we're actually only 30% occupied at the moment, but only 77.8% of the have actually paid. And again, that's from comparing the number of occupied stalls in this zone with the number of paid vehicles in this zone. So you can start to look at all kinds of interesting information here related to the payment compliance. One of my favorite ones is this one, where you can look at non-paying vehicles. So at any given time of the day, when is there the most non-paying vehicles within this zone? And this is an average. I should have mentioned that. This is also an average for January, the whole month of January. And I actually selected between 8 and 8. I did that before the meeting, so I didn't want to take time doing that here. And just to show that you can slice and dice things, and maybe you only care about a certain day of the week. Maybe you only care about weekdays, for example. You can deselect the weekends and look at the data that way as well. So lots of ways to slice and dice the data, so you're understanding your parking, ways to drive outcomes. And as I mentioned earlier, this information can go to different things like third-party apps. Like we're partnered with Arcadis and Modi for some of their stuff. Even in Kirkland, we're working with Arcadis there, as well as in Arlington County. So I'm going to switch over now to demonstrate the phone app, assuming this will work. I'm going to share my screen on my phone. So please be patient as I try to do this successfully. All right, so this is the eXactNav mobile app. And you can see the blue dot in the middle of the screen. That's actually where I am right now in Kitchener. And our headquarters is in Waterloo, which is not far away. And you can see that there's like a little thing here that says 10. If I click on that, it says 10 of the 23 spots available. If I click on that again, it'll tell me that that's a 16-minute drive away, that there's 10 of 23 spots available. And then I can navigate there, and it will open my preferred navigation app, like Google Maps, for example, and give me turn-by-turn directions. I can also look more into what's inside that parking lot, and I can see here that there's 9 spots available out of the 20. There's only there's no accessibility stalls available, and I forgot to turn on EV charging, so let me do that. So we are able to filter on stall type. So in this lot, I know there's only 3 stall types, but in other deployments, there's many different types that you may want to filter on. So if I unfilter, or if I selected EV charging stalls as something I want to view, it shows up here, both down here as well as in the summary. So again, if I want to navigate, I can just hit navigate, and then it'll say navigate to zone or select spot. And then you have a checkbox here where you can say notify me if the zone becomes full. So if that zone became full on my 16-minute drive there, it would notify me and ask if I want to be directed to the next available, the closest available area. Now that's somewhat interesting, but that's really just, the 11X headquarters, which, is probably not that interesting to most people. However, we do have a much more interesting thing to show, and this is, again, live data. This is in Arlington County, Virginia, where we have over 4,500 stalls installed. And so this app, if you ever go there, please download the app, because my co-founder Fraser and I, when we go, we use it all the time to help find parking. It's a very busy area. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see how these little circles and symbols have updated. You can see some are red, indicating that there's very little amount of parking available in that particular zone. That is configurable of how you want this to go. So maybe you want to be 90% before it turns red. You can drag that. You can kind of set it to what you like. I like 1680. That's what I find is the most helpful for me personally. A few other things you can select here, like well, I already mentioned the filters. You can set up your filters here. You can, when I first opened the app, it took me, the blue dot was in the middle of the screen, and it showed me 50-kilometer radius around me. You can change that setting. And also, if you don't like metric, if you want imperial, that's no problem as well. You can select that. So back to here. So this is a very busy part of Arlington. There is this big lot here. So you can see this is all, again, real-time availability. So you'll probably see some of the P's change color. So the darker color means it's available, and the grayed out color means that it's occupied. Again, you can filter. So if I just care about accessible stalls, for example, I could just, whoops, turn that one on, and then I just see the accessibility stalls are available. But of course, I want to see more stalls for this demo, so I'm going to click that on again. So you can click, whoops, incoming call. Sorry about that. So you can click on any of these, symbols at any time. So like there's 0 spots available there. But on this street, there's, 7 of 12 spots available. So I click into that. Now it's telling me it's an 8 hours and 36-minute drive. Well, that's because I am very far away from Arlington County right now. But if I was to select that parking lot or parking spot, it's only a 3-minute walk to the parking destination, which is the one that I typed in, the courthouse. Now, when you're in here, you can, favorite. You can look at the parking situation. So in this case, I can zoom in and see, okay, here's the actual deployment. This is like a summary of what's available at this time. You also have this kind of price information down here. So I sort of mentioned Arlington a little bit. So they have a performance parking project that we work with them on, which is all about using the demand data collected by our sensors to drive demand-based pricing. So here's a great example of, where they've looked at, well, what does that peak occupancy look like? Well, in this particular area, the peak is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So what they've done here is they've changed the price such that it's $1.75 per hour from 8 to 10. From 10 to 2, it's $2.25. And from 2 to 8, it's $1.75. Why? And it's also a 2-hour limit all the time. So why are they doing that? So there'll be other block faces around here that will be a lower rate during that peak time. And they're really trying to drive parking behavior to help balance their parking by changing the price based on the demand. But back to the EXactNav app. So if I want to navigate here, I can click this and it'll say, do you want to navigate to the zone or the spot? If I say spot, it'll take me in to zoom in to the spots. If I say zone, it can notify me when the zone's available or not on my ride there. Couple other things to show. So there was a restaurant that my co-founder and I, Fraser and I, went to when we were there called Urban Thai Restaurant. So this is just using Google to find things. So it found that restaurant, which is in a quite busy area of what's called Crystal City in the Arlington County area. So I can just keep zooming in there and I can look at the parking situation. There's this parking lot in behind there, but I want to look at the street parking. I could select a spot. Now I selected one intentionally that was occupied because I want to show that you also have this ability to notify you when a spot becomes available. But yeah, maybe you want to select a spot that is available and you can navigate to that specific spot or to that general area. And it will guide Google to navigate you to the correct area. Okay, so I think it's 1:32, and I promised we'd leave 15 minutes for questions. So Diana, you were correct, and I think the timing was going pretty well. Let me share my screen again. Just a couple other things I wanted to mention. So if you want to learn more, I mean, we have lots of information on our website. We have this learn more area with all kinds of resources. We have this wonderful AI bot called Evelyn, not to confuse with 11. But she can be quite helpful. So please engage her if you want to learn more. Also, of course, reach out to us anytime to learn more. So that pretty much brings us to the end. I just wanted to show this one slide just to give you an idea of some of our customers. So we are pretty widely deployed in the US and Canada across municipalities and universities. Target areas because a lot of times they have very similar outcomes like better driving experience, better policies, better regulations, and this system can really help with that. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope with all my heart you learned something and have a good rest of your day. I guess I shouldn't close off too much because we have some question time. So hopefully people put some questions in the Q&A, and Diana's going to assist me by asking me some questions. And again, there's my contact information if you'd like to reach out directly.
Alrighty, first question. What is the cost of a typical deployment?
That's a very common question. So, and it's a little bit complicated to answer, but I'll do the best I can. So, the reason why it's complicated is because there's a network that needs to be deployed. There's installation fees for, the gateways and the sensors and the labor. That's mostly labor fees, and labor can vary quite a bit across geographies. But I can give you a couple examples. This is all public information because most of our business is through public procurement, through RFPs. We do have source contract if anyone's interested in learning more about that. But I'll give you an example of Kirkland because Kirkland was one of the demonstrations that I showed. That was about $200,000 for their 500 sensors. And interestingly, what led them down this path, and Kimberly from there is going to talk more about it in one of the events coming up, is that to do like a parking study wasn't that much difference in price, but now they have a system in place that they are getting real-time 24/7 365 data. But yeah, it does depend on the size of the deployment and some of those details in terms of how much it costs, but that'll give you a rough idea.
Okay, and is a sensor required for all spaces?
No, that's a great question. So a couple different things to consider there. So first of all, we do ingest third-party occupancy data. We partnered with Parking Logics and have several deployments with them where, for example, also MyStall is a good partner of ours. They'll do camera counting. So we are able to take occupancy information from different sources. And sometimes, for a big parking lot where you have controlled entry exit, it might make more sense to put a camera or a sensor to count the in and outs. So that's totally supported. The other thing I want to mention is that some cities will just focus on their pain point. Like Kirkland is a good example. They got their downtown core, but they have lots of other parking that they may want to monitor in the future. But you don't have to do it all at once. Let's see, they want to do this, see if they got the value out of it, and then they would determine what their next steps are. There's some bigger accounts as well, like Toronto Parking Authority, where we're deploying, 1,000, couple thousand a year over many years. So targeting the key areas. So every community, has different needs, different budget, and we're very flexible and adaptable. It's very easy to expand what's being monitored.
Okay, you mentioned integrations. Does it work with LPR systems? Should I use both together?
This is something that can be used with an LPR system. LPR, that's kind of a technology that can be used across a lot of different use cases. So if you take a situation where maybe you're doing payment enforcement, payment compliance enforcement on street, for example, you may have a vehicle that's outfitted with LPR that's driving by and dinging people's license plates and checking in the cloud to see, okay, have they paid or not paid? And if they haven't paid, maybe the officer will get an alert. They'll know to pull over and go and write a citation. So that LPR information can also be used as occupancy information. So it's still a spot check. It's still happening whenever a car enforcement officer vehicle happens to drive by that particular space, but that is better than probably nothing. So that can also be ingested into our system. Pretty much any kind of occupancy data that's available can be integrated.
Couple more questions here. Is it true that you will be installing over 10,000 sensors at Clemson University? Smiley face.
Yes, I think I know who may have made that smiley face. But yes, we are so incredibly thrilled. The people there that we're working with are amazing. And yeah, it's going to be the biggest project of its type, especially considering some of the innovative things that are going to happen there. Like, for example, we're putting up about 45 or 50 digital displays so that people will be able to get around campus just by looking at digital displays to understand, what is available in real time, as well as having our navigation app, which I just gave you a demo of, but also they already have a campus app called Tiger Commute, which has all kinds of great commuting and parking information in it. So we will integrate with them, which will make that app a lot better as well. Really innovative campus. Super excited to get going. We'll start installation there in a couple weeks, actually. Should be finished by the summer.
Super exciting. Are there any issues with privacy and data collection?
This interestingly just came up in a customer meeting last week. And there's a lot of confusion about sensors because there's like camera vendors often say that they use sensors, but it's actually a camera, so it's taking photo and video. Our sensors don't have any imagery. It's like a lot of times it's buried under the ground. Like I mentioned, it uses radar. So radar, the reason why we use radar is because radar can go through the epoxy that we put over top of the sensor as if it's not even there. So we're measuring the distance. It can't really go through metal. So that radar energy goes through the epoxy as if it's not there. Because it's like 60 gigahertz of a frequency, hits the top of the car, comes back down. We measure the energy, and that's how we detect the vehicles there, as well as the magnetometer. Again, the magnetometer is just a change in magnetic field. There's no way to get the license plate number and even the type of vehicle is completely private. So the whole system runs, assuming it's our sensors using, of course, like I mentioned, we do ingest third-party data. When we do ingest third-party data, it's also anonymous. For example, we get payment transactions, but there's no identity associated with that data that we're ingesting. Same with the occupancy data we would get from LPR. We're not going to get the license plates or anything like that come on our system. We just want the occupancy information. So completely private.
Alrighty, let's call for questions. I think that's it there, Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Diana. And thank you everyone again for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.